Hi, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our session today for IDP Southeast Asia IELTS Speaking Workshop. So meantime, while we are waiting for the rest of the participants, of the attendees to join, we would like to welcome you to this short video tutorial about computer-delivered IELTS.
The process for taking IELTS on a computer starts by being greeted by an IELTS staff member. They will verify that it's you by checking your passport or ID and scanning your fingerprints. You can check in and leave your belongings with our staff. Then our staff will take your photograph for identification purposes. Next, our staff will take you to the waiting area where you can relax and wait for your exam to begin. Our invigilators will read the rules and exam procedures to you. You will take the listening, reading and writing sections on a computer, which will take 2.5 hours. You will then take the speaking section one-on-one with an examiner. When the time comes, the invigilator will take you to the exam room. This is your last chance to make sure you have left your belongings outside the exam room. When you enter the exam room, the invigilator will take you to your assigned seat before explaining the rules and regulations one last time. IDP will give you noise-cancelling headphones for superior sound quality and convenience for the listening part of your exam. After taking the computer-based parts of the exam, you must return to the waiting area and await your turn. Our examiner will take you to your room for your speaking exam. The examiner will verify your identification by recording your name and exam ID number. When taking IELTS on a computer, all sections of the exam will take place on the same day. The speaking section will take place in a private room without any noise or distraction. If you don't understand any questions, you may ask your examiner to repeat or rephrase the question. When you finish your exam, our invigilator will take you back to pick up your belongings. The results of your IELTS on computer exam will be released within 5 to 7 days, enabling you to study abroad or land the job of your dreams in various countries around the world. Your IELTS, your choice. Faster results, more test sessions. Speaking exam, one-on-one. Learn more about taking IELTS on a computer app.
Welcome to our computer-delivered IELTS Tutorial 1. This tutorial will show you how to complete and prepare for computer-delivered IELTS. For each section, there's a clock at the top of the screen, which tells you how much time you have left. For the reading and writing tests, the clock will turn red and flash when you have 10 and 5 minutes left. The tests will automatically stop when the time finishes. The instructions for each part are in the box at the top of the screen. You can use the navigation bar at the bottom of the screen to move from one question to the next. Click on the number to go to that question. You can also click on the forward arrow to go to the next question, or the back arrow to go to the previous question. When you have answered the question, a line will appear under that question in the navigation bar. You can click on Review if you want to look at the question again later. The question number will be shown as a circle. You can review and change your answers at any time until the end of the test. Click on the yellow arrow if you want to make the navigation bar smaller. You can use the scroll bar to see all the questions. In each of the tests, you can change the screen settings. To do this, click on the Settings tab at the top of the screen. You can change the size and color of the text. In each of the tests, there is a Help tab. If you click on the Help tab, this will give you information about the task you are currently doing. If you click on Test Help, you will see information about how the test works. If you wish, you can also highlight sections of text. If you need to leave the test room for a few minutes, you can hide your screen by clicking on the Hide tab. When you return to the test room, click on the Resume Test button. That is the end of the introduction tutorial for computer-delivered IELTS. Check out the IDP IELTS YouTube channel for tutorial videos for listening, reading and writing. In the reading test, the text appears on the left and the questions on the right. To see all the text and the questions, you'll need to use both scroll bars. For some questions, you need to choose an answer. If you want to change your answer, click on a new answer. If you want to leave a question unanswered, click on the answer again. To look at the next question, just click on the question itself. For some questions, you need to choose more than one answer. If you want to change any of your answers, click on the answer you want to change and then click on your new answer. If you want to leave any of the questions unanswered, click on the answer again. For some questions in the reading test, you need to choose which paragraph or section contains the information listed in the table. Remember to scroll to read all the text. For each question, click on the correct space in the table. If you want to change an answer, click on your new answer. If you want to leave the question unanswered, click on the answer again. For some questions in the reading test, you need to click on a heading for a paragraph or section and move it into the gap. If you want to change your answer, move another heading into the gap. If you want to leave the question unanswered, move the heading back. And for some questions, you need to write your answer on a gap in a diagram. If you wish, you can also highlight sections of text. To do this, left-click and drag your cursor over the section of text or question you wish to highlight. Then right-click and select the highlight option. To remove highlighting from the text, right-click on the highlighted area and select Clear. If you wish to remove all highlighting from the screen, right-click on a highlighted area and select Clear All. You can also make notes on a section of text. To do this, left-click and drag the cursor over the section of text or question you want to make notes about. Then right-click and select the Notes option. Your chosen section of text will be highlighted and a yellow notepad will appear. You can write your notes on this. Click on the cross in the notepad to hide your notes. To see your notes again, click on the highlighted section of text. If you want to see which areas of highlighted text have notes, move the cursor slowly over each area of highlighted text. If a small orange box appears, it means that the highlighted text contains notes. To remove notes from text or questions, right-click on the highlighted area and select Clear.
So I hope you guys learned something about computer-delivered IELTS test. So if you have any question or other inquiries, later on, feel free to ask me. My name is Lilette, so you can see my name from the chat box. And then I will also play another video later, maybe after the session. It's all about writing component. So how to navigate in computer-delivered IELTS writing part. And then I will also have like some announcements. So for those who are not yet registered with IELTS test, be it paper-based or computer-delivered IELTS, after the session today, in the next 1 month, if you will register for the IELTS test with IDP, we will provide you a Macquarie code, wherein it's an online practice material for listening, reading, writing, and speaking. You can access free for 14 days at your own pace, at your own time. All right, so let me begin. So once again, everyone, good afternoon or good evening. Thank you for joining us today. So again, my name is Lilette, and I am the main host and moderator for tonight. So our session today, together with my other co-moderators from Malaysia, Basheni, and also one from Singapore, Sarah. So if you have any question, feel free to ask via chat box or even in the Q&A section. So welcome again to our free IDP IELTS Succeeding in Speaking session with our IELTS expert today. By the end of this webinar, you will be able to understand the IELTS speaking test components, consider how you will be scored, identify strengths and weaknesses in example IELTS tests. So you will see some video recordings later on, implement useful advice to approach the speaking test. So if you are joining us via Zoom, feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A box. And if you are following along with us on Facebook Live, please share your question in the comment section and I will read them out to our IELTS expert at the end of the webinar. So everyone, are you excited to meet our IELTS expert tonight? So he is currently based in Cambodia and has been teaching English since 2008, specializing in exam and IELTS preparation for various age groups. He enjoys helping students improve in both public speaking as well as academic writing. Currently, he's pursuing a master's degree in bilingual education from the University of Birmingham. So without further ado, let us all welcome our IELTS expert, Reith. Over to you, Neil.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction. So welcome everyone to this webinar about speaking. So this session is going to focus on speaking only, but there are many other online webinars that have been recorded by IDP that you can access from the Facebook page. So if you want to brush up on your listening skills or your writing skills, do head over to the IDP Facebook page. So a listening test, hopefully you can all hear me. So thumbs up. If you're having issues hearing me, do raise your hand. And during the webinar, you can let us know if there's any issues by raising your hand, and our moderators will try to fix the issue. Okay, so as Lilette mentioned, this is about succeeding in speaking. My name is Reith. So at the moment, I'm currently based in Cambodia, but I've been teaching in Thailand and the UK. And my main focus has been on exam preparation. I'd like to know about you. In the chat box, could you briefly comment on the following: your name and location, whether or not you're doing the academic test, your band goal, so this is a score that you're aiming for and the reason, and your preparations to achieve that. Now, of course, if you don't have a band goal or a reason, you can leave that blank. And here's an example. I'll give you a couple of minutes just to pop your ideas in the Q&A in the chat. Thank you, Sean. It's nice to know that you can hear me. Sometimes it feels like I'm talking to a screen. Wow, Sean, going for 8. That's great. Karen, hi Karen from the Philippines. My, congratulations, already at band 8. Ratana, okay, 7.5. Hi Vanessa. Okay, so you're going for an Australian PR application. Hi Vibol, 8. So I'm seeing lots of 7s and 8s. Hi Donna. Okay, so you're going for a course, okay. Hi Ha. Wow, lots of interesting answers. So it all seems that you're going for high band scores, so above band 5. So in order to get more than a band 5, it requires a lot of study, a lot of practice, and a lot of effort. And I'm sure you all know that. Okay, well, it's nice to meet you all. Sorry I couldn't mention all your names, but very interesting to read what you're aiming for. Remember, it is important to have goals before doing the IELTS test to know where you're headed. And I think that is what is great about doing the IELTS test. There's an end goal to it. I've taught general English before, and students plod along for many, many years studying English without a goal in mind. But the great thing about IELTS is that everyone usually is aiming for something. They're aiming for a university place, a visa, or some other migration purpose. Okay, as Lila mentioned, hopefully by the end of this session, you'll be better able to talk about the IELTS speaking test to your friends, think about how you're scored, identify some strengths and weaknesses in some example IELTS tests, and implement some useful approaches. Now, of course, please do give us feedback at the end so that we can tweak the presentation and make it better for future attendees. And as Lila mentioned, if you have some burning questions that I haven't answered, that are on the tip of your tongue, do pop them in the question panel. And hopefully by the end of the session, I'll have time to answer as many as I can. Also, my kind moderators will also attempt to answer some of your questions as well, if they can. Okay, let's start off with a quiz. In the UK, they might call it a pub quiz. It's fun. It's not serious, so don't worry, you're not being scored on this. What I'd like you to do is just write the letter in the chat box. So, the speaking test, how long does it last? I think Mr. or Miss Lee are very quick on the button there. So yes, 11 to 14 minutes. Now you should be aiming towards the 14-minute mark rather than the 11-minute mark. There have been students I've known who speak very quickly. They want to get the test over and done with as quickly as possible. And the examiner who tests them is constantly asking them why in order to extend their turn. So remember, the examiner is trying to get as much language from you as possible. So they want to hear 14 minutes from you. So that's what you should aim for. At the end of 14 minutes, they might cut you off because that's the end of the test, but don't worry. And a lot of questions I've had from students in the past have been, do you get to see the clock? Do you get to see the stopwatch? Unfortunately, no. The stopwatch is for the purposes of the examiner. So you don't see the stopwatch, but don't worry if the examiner stops you before you've finished. They will keep you on track of the time. Okay, question number 2. Are your fingers ready? How many parts? Oh, so quick. Very good, thank you. Someone mentioned general. Actually, it's the same for both. You have 3 parts, whether it's academic or general. It's the same test for speaking. So there are 3 parts. And the idea is it gets more difficult over the parts until the end, where the discussion is trying to test your flexibility with language. In the chat box, could you tell me if I'm going too fast, too slow, or just right? Perfect, thank you. Now, bear in mind, I'm talking to a screen. So hopefully this is good for you. Okay, question number 3, I think. Fingers ready. Fingers on the buzzers. Oh, I can't trick any of you. Okay, so yes, the first part is the kind of easiest part. It's the warm-up. It's to get you ready for the marathon. Okay, so it's personal, familiar topics. However, although it's slightly easier than part 2 and part 3, this is your chance to shine, the first impression. So although it's personal and familiar topics, you still need to wow the examiner. Fingers on the buzzers. Thank you. Very good, very fast. Yes, you don't get to choose your own topic, unfortunately, and you don't get a choice. You are given a topic to talk about. So this could be any topic. And so that's the challenge of part 2. Some students have asked me, does the examiner take the question away after they've seen it, after the student has seen it? No. For the entire part 2 speaking turn, the examinee, the student, gets to see the question card. So don't worry, you get that. But you're not allowed to write on the booklet, so bear that in mind. But you will have some paper that you can take notes on. Okay, are you ready for the next one? I saw someone put B. Yes, I'm sure that's a dream of many students, to be given as much time as you need to prep. I remember doing my speaking test for Thai language, and I was given about 30 seconds to prepare. So I think 1 minute is quite generous, but perhaps not too generous for many students. But you get 1 minute to prepare. And I would say, out of all the things in speaking, this is the part of the test that students don't necessarily practice for. So if I were to give you a big tip, it would be to practice taking notes for part 2 and time yourself. It's a really key skill that can help you boost your band. Okay, next question. Okay, Kathleen, thank you. Sean, thank you. Beverly, thank you. Twin, thank you. Yes, part 3 is connected to part 2. So in part 2, if you were asked to talk about your school days, part 3 would probably be about education. If in part 2 you were asked to talk about hobby, part 3 would probably be about activities we do in our free time or pastimes. So yes, part 2 and part 3 are very much connected. Okay, next question. Okay, I think most of you have got the right answer, C. All speaking tests are recorded. First and foremost, for the examiner to listen back after the test. Every examiner kind of listens back and see how, or listens how the student has done in various parts of the test. But it also is required for remarking purposes to be checked and for standardization. It's really important that examiners follow script, follow the criteria, and make sure that the standards are kept to a high level. So yes, they are remarked and checked, not all the time, but frequently. Okay, thank you for playing the quiz. I hope it wasn't too hard. Okay, so as I've mentioned, this focuses on speaking. So as we've mentioned in the quiz, there are 2 types of tests. There's academic and general training. I saw that some of you are planning to do the general for visa purposes. I saw many of you are trying to go for the academic. The differences are that the reading and writing are different. However, the listening and the speaking are the same. And in the speaking, you have up to 14 minutes. Part 1 is questions about you. Then part 2 is talking about a topic. And part 3 is a general discussion. So how are you scored? Again, many students don't really look into this. And I think it's quite useful to look into it, to help you work out what you need to do to hit the bands that you are aiming for. And this is for writing as well, and for writing. So there's a similar marking criteria for writing, which is available online as well. Let's have a look at speaking though. So the first part is fluency and coherency. So this is your ability to speak at length without too many hesitations not too many false starts. And it's the ability to make yourself understood. So it's using things like signposts, transition words. The second part is lexical resource. Lexical is just another way of saying vocabulary. So this is your ability to talk about a variety of topics and pull on your vocabulary to talk about them at length. And in order to get to the 7s and the 8s, or even to the 9, you need to show your flexibility. You need to be able to use collocations well. You need to use idiomatic language. You need to show your ability to use synonyms and paraphrases. The third part is your grammar. So again, it's your ability to draw on your grammatical knowledge to give clear answers and talk across time. So whether it be past, present, or future, and a mix. It's also the more subtle parts of grammar. So things like articles. It's things like complex sentences. So it's not just saying a simple sentence like I love cheese. It's making that longer. It's saying things like I love cheese because it melts in the mouth. So it's the ability to extend your sentences and create grammatically correct sentences in the same process. And pronunciation. So this is your ability to use the various features of pronunciation, things like sentence stress, word stress. It's pronouncing your ending sounds. It's making sure that your phonemes are correctly pronounced. It's making sure that your accent doesn't interfere with your speaking turn. Now, some of my students have asked me, does accent come into play? To be honest, as long as you've got the sentence stress down, the word stress down, you're correctly pronouncing the phonemes and things like that, then the accent isn't as a barrier. So when you're planning to prepare for your test, you should be splitting your study regime into 4 parts. You should be working on your fluency, then you should be working on your vocabulary, then your grammatical range, and then your pronunciation, and then putting it all together. You shouldn't be just preparing one area. I've known some students that I've taught over the years who just focus on grammar, that's it. And they might score well in the grammar section, but then their pronunciation and lexical resource let them down. So it's important to have a balanced approach to your preparation. This is the what can we call it? This is the tool that examiners use, or it's a similar tool that the examiners use to score candidates. Of course, the examiners have a special band descriptor that's just for them, it's confidential. However, this is the public version, which is very, very similar. And this is available on IELTS.org, but also I believe Leela has shared it with you as well by email. This should be stuck in your folder. This should be on your desktop. This should be on your bathroom door. This is what you need to follow to hit the goals that you've mentioned earlier in this session. So if you're aiming for 8, you need to make sure you can tick off all the criteria that's across this band descriptor. So let's have a look at it a bit more clearly. Hopefully you can all see it. Can you just write into chat whether or not you can see it clearly? So yes, or yes, I can see it clearly, or no, it's not that clear. Okay, excellent. If it's not clear, it is available. I think it's been sent to you. So let's have a look at the differences between 6, because I know some of you have mentioned 6, and let's say 8. Some of you have mentioned 8. So if we look at the first criterion, this is fluency and coherence. So this is the ability to talk at length. At 6, someone might lose coherence at times. So this is maybe false starts, restarting, trying to fix their speaking. They've made a mistake. They use repetition and hesitation. So they're using a lot of that. They might use a lot of connectives, so things like conjunctions. They might use discourse markers, so let me begin by saying, but sometimes it might be inappropriate. However, if you're at 8, fluent. So this is very little repetition, very little correction. You can correct yourself a couple of times. That's natural for most native speakers, let's say, but we don't want to hear it too often. And this is very important. Develops the topics coherently and appropriately. So this is talking about a topic well and using enough depth to talk about it. If we look at lexical resource, so remember this is about your vocabulary. At 6, there's some inappropriacies, so there's mistakes. Paraphrases a couple of times, generally paraphrases, doesn't rely too much on the examples in that the examiner uses. But if we go to 8, we're looking at precise meaning. So this is using a good lexical resource for a variety of topics, using idiomatic vocabulary and paraphrasing. And paraphrasing is so important, and we'll cover that in a bit. Grammatical range. So again, at 6, we're looking at simple and complex structures, but limited flexibility. So this means that there aren't that many, or it's not very clear that the candidate can use a lot. And again, frequent mistakes. This is key. But if we're looking at 8, we're looking at a lot of error-free sentences and a wide range of structures. So we're looking at complex sentences. So I suggest after this, or when you have free time, do a Google search for complex sentences. Go to the IDP website, look at the examples on that site, and try to practice building your sentence construction. Okay, the last one, pronunciation. So this is key, generally understood throughout, but there's some mispronunciation of individual words or sounds. So it's a bit like saying photography instead of photography. Maybe there's some pronunciation features like intonation and stress, but mixed control, so they're maybe at times not used. But if we go to 8, understood throughout, L1 accent has minimal effect on being understood. So L1 means your first language. And a wide range of pronunciation features are used. So it's really important to drill yourself at home on using things like sentence stress, word stress, working on the syllables. Listen, you should record yourself and listen back, find out where you are weak and try to work on it. Okay. So everyone should hopefully have a copy of this. If you don't, you can go to the IELTS website, IELTS.org, and download it. And you should try to memorize this and use this as a success criteria for your preparation. And I think Leila has shared it actually in chat, so you can download it there. Okay, we're going to watch some examples. These are a range. These show a range of abilities. So this is part one. This is the introduction and interview. I have a slight technical issue. So Lilet will show you the first 3 minutes. Lilet.
All right, give me a second, please.
And before you start it, I want everybody to choose one criterion. So you can choose fluency, you can choose lexical resource, you can choose fluency, lexical resource, pronunciation, or grammatical accuracy. So choose one. And then when you're listening to Ashish, I want you to think about what he does well and what he could perhaps do better. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's begin.
Let's talk about what you do. Do you work or are you a student?
Yes, I am both actually. I work part-time as well as a student.
What job do you do?
I'm an payroll controller. I control the payroll in a property management company.
Do you meet interesting people in your job?
Not many, but yes, sometimes I have to visit the banks and the sites, so yes, I do.
How long have you been doing this sort of work?
For a year and a half now.
Let's go on to talk about friends now. Are your friends mostly your age or different ages?
No, many different ages.
Why?
Where it ranges. It's basically because I am not from this place. I'm from back Nepal, and when I came here, I met people from my country as well as people from different places at work and at different places. So they're all over the place.
Do you usually see your friends during the week or at weekends?
It depends. I'd see them all over the week, I think. Work friends at work, after work drinks and things like that. So yeah, all throughout the week.
Okay. The last time you saw your friends, what did you do together?
We went out for a movie last Saturday. There was this interesting movie that we heard was out on due date, so we all decided to go for it, and it was pretty nice.
In what ways are your friends important to you?
Oh, they are very important to me because I hate to be lonely. I need to talk to someone every now and then because I can't just sit, not to say do nothing, but I need someone to confront and talk to, so I give them a great importance in my life.
I'd like to move on to talk about food and cooking now. What kind of food do you like to eat?
I like Asian food quite a lot because it's because of its taste, its variety, and things like that.
What kind of new food would you like to try?
That would be French. Pure French food, I would say.
Why?
I've heard a lot about it, but because of its taste, its originality. So, but I haven't got a chance to have the original French food as yet. So yeah, I would like to try that.
Do you like
Thank you,
cooking?
Lilet.
No, that's not just my cup of tea. Not at.
Yes, Neil?
Thank you. Everyone, could you put down into chats one thing that he did well? And bear in mind the criteria that we've talked about. Yeah, a lot of you have mentioned fluency and coherency. I wrote the same thing. I heard lots of connective words, things like because, but, as well as it depends. I also heard while listening to him a number of signposts. So this is to help the listener know where the talk is going. So things like I decided, I've heard, that would be. So yes, I agree with all of you. He was very good at being coherent, and maintaining a fluency. Well done, everyone. So these are some of my general tips and approaches. Now, of course, you don't need to take all of these on board. You may not like any of them, in fact, but I do suggest you take on board a few of them. So before the test, do prepare for personal, familiar topics. Even if you think you have it down, even if you think you know how to talk about family and you know how to talk about hobbies, make sure you practice. As I've mentioned before, you should try to record yourself and listen back, see where you could improve. In the test, try to give extended answers. So this goes back to grammar. So it's the ability to use complex sentences. So you should be using things like because, for example. This also helps with your coherency. You do need to give a good first impression. Now, of course, you're not marked, you're not scored on how you look, you're not scored on your facial features. But if you go in there smiling with calmness, if you're friendly, then this helps you, or this has an impact, a positive impact on your speaking. So you need to train yourself to smile, be calm, be friendly. It does help. And of course, in part one, you might get a question that stumps you. You may have no idea how to answer it. So you can pause occasionally to consider the question first. Just use a filler, for example, oh, let me think about that. Or I've never thought about that. Let me think. But do not overuse it. You don't want to do that with every question. So this is an example of a part one question and answer. So bear in mind, I said it's on familiar topics. So you might get the topic learning. So the examiner might say, let's talk about learning. And your first question might be, what do you like learning? Now, this is a very broad question. It's not very specific. So it's up to you as the student, as the examinee, to answer it how you like. There's no right or wrong answer in terms of the content. So this is how I would answer it. I love studying. I've enjoyed learning about the world ever since I started primary school. Right now, I'm cramming for the IELTS because I want to eventually study abroad. As you can see, I immediately start to use synonyms or close synonyms. So I've said love and enjoyed. Both are close or are synonyms to like. I've also used the word studying. I've used school. And I've used cramming. So these are all related pieces of vocabulary. So as I've mentioned with lexical resource, it's really important for you to use synonyms and paraphrasing. You shouldn't rely on the language of the question. You can use it occasionally like this, but not too much. And you don't want to overload the examiner in part one. So we're not looking for a long turn. The examiner is not wanting you to speak for 1 minute or 2 minutes. They just want a short, straight to the buck answer, 2 or 3 sentences, and that's it. The worst thing to do is do a short answer, such as, I love studying, and that's it. And if you just give a short answer, the examiner will ask you why. Because they want you to extend your answer. So part one is about personal and familiar topics. Learning is one such example. Can you think of 3 more part one topics? Can you add them to the chat, please?
We have
Okay, I'm
some
seeing
answers
hometown,
here. Yep.
work, hobbies, family, accommodation, yes, hometown, perfume, yes, festival, color, yes, achievements, education, yes, aims, perhaps sports, hobbies, good. So that's what you're aiming for. You're aiming to generate a list of part 1 topics, and then you should be practicing on about those topics. Good job, thank you. Okay, moving on. We're now going to listen to Tina from Vietnam. Now, I want you to focus on one of the criterion you choose, and I want you to think about what she does well and what she could improve. Leila, can you play the video?
Yep.
Tina, now I'm going to give you a topic and I'd like you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you talk, you will have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say. You can make some notes if you wish. Do you understand? Here's some paper and pencil for making notes. And here's your topic. I'd like you to describe an interest or hobby that you enjoy. All right, Tina? Yeah. Remember, you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
Okay. My interest or hobby that I enjoy is shopping and picnics to spend time with my family or friends, or especially I want to do volunteers for shopping. I think when I feel stressed out, I can shopping, I can relax with to buy a new clothes for me in the special days, and in picnic, I think picnic and travel, I think I can widen my knowledge as well as I can make more friends from many countries, and especially if I travel with my friend or my family, I can spend time to understand them, and for me the more important is do volunteer, because I love actually I love the people, so I want to spend time to help them to overcome or try to get over the problem. So I often, before when I live in Vietnam, I often go to the church and or some association, and I often ask my friend to contribute and
Thank you, Leila. Thank you.
to help the poor people or the old people.
All right.
Okay, in the chat box, could you write down one thing she did well and perhaps one thing she could improve? Okay, I see similar answers. I would say I agree in terms of fluency. On the one hand, she was able to keep going. So that was a strength. She was able to keep going. She wasn't stopping completely. So that's a plus. However, she was kind of hesitating a bit, which kind of was a bit of a drawback. And I'd also agree with some of you that her pronunciation needs to be worked on. There's a lot of L1 interference, so a lot of first language interference. So she needs to train herself to use a bit of sentence stress, a bit of word stress, a bit of intonation, because it came out a little bit flat. But I think her confidence did shine through. So that is important when you do the test. You need to sit upright, you need to give some eye contact, smile a little bit. I think she did very well in that regard. And yes, there was a bit of incoherence eventually because it was hard to keep track of what she was saying. So she also needed probably to use some signposts. Okay, let's move on. We've got perhaps about 6 or so more minutes, and then I'll try to answer some of your questions. So part 2, tips and approaches. Again, practice. Record yourself, critique yourself. Ask your friends, ask your teachers to listen to you, to your recording, see what they get or what feedback they give. And try to practice timed note-taking. As I said before, this is the one skill that students often forget to practice. So you do need to practice taking 1-minute pieces of information before you take the part 2 test. You need to stay calm and talk at reasonable speed. Now, I saw in chat, some of you said, how do I stay calm? Yes, it's quite difficult. Even now, I'm quite nervous. The best thing to do is practice. Practice talking in front of people, practice talking in front of your family. If you can, do presentations at your workplace. And think about using voice exercises and relaxation techniques before you do the IELTS test. There are many, many videos on YouTube on how to relax yourself, how artists relax their voices, and how actors get loose. So go onto YouTube and search for ways to relax before a test or voice exercises. It's really important to train yourself to stay calm. And as you saw with Tina, the last recording that we saw, she spoke quite quickly. And I think that was, even though she seemed confident, she looked confident, I think her anxiety maybe caused her to speak a little bit too quickly. And as I've mentioned, you need to paraphrase and use synonyms. Try to speak for at least 2 minutes. Don't go for 1 minute. Try to speak for the full 2 minutes. The examiner wants to hear the full 2 minutes. If you only speak for a minute, the examiner will likely say, can you tell me any more about that? You could use a strategy like PPF. So this is talking about the past, the present, and the future. It's best to speak from your own experiences, but if you really need to, you can embellish or adapt the topic. And there's no need to answer all the prompts. So here's an example question. Describe a webinar you attended that was useful to you. So all part 2 questions kind of start like that. They want you to describe or explain and talk in detail about something. And then you will see, you should say, and then you get 3 prompts: when the webinar was, what it was about, how it helped you. And then at the end, it kind of asks you to give a final note on the piece of speaking. So here it says, would you recommend other people attending this webinar? So often, most topics are about stories about yourself or something that happened in your life. So here's an example answer for that question. To be honest, I'm a bit of a technophobe. I haven't ever attended an online seminar or anything like that in my life. Maybe I should. So immediately, you know, I've never been on a webinar. So if you get a question like that, if you get a question where you've never experienced that, one technique is to adapt the question a little bit. You still want to stay within the topic, but you can adapt it. So here, I've never been on an online seminar ever. So I can adapt the question a little bit, but I'm still staying within the realm of training and education. What I can talk about is a half-day training seminar I attended face-to-face last year. It was all about first aid in the workplace. I think it was also filmed and put online for staff who I guess couldn't attend. So I'm linking back to the topic, but I'm still talking about a face-to-face seminar rather than a webinar. So then I explain in a bit of detail. I give my opinion, which is really important. And then maybe a suggestion to myself. And as you can see, I've talked about the present, the past, the present, and then the future. So I'm using a strategy, PPF. So that's a good strategy to use to tick the grammar criterion, because in the grammar section, you need to show your flexibility to talk about a wide range of tenses or time areas. So try to use something like a PPF strategy. You know, talk about the past, talk about the present, and talk about the future. Okay. Okay, it's now 6:17. Leila, should I continue or should we go to questions?
You may continue.
Okay, let me know when I should go to questions.
Sure.
Okay, now this one is a strong candidate. So it's a two-way discussion, so this is your part 3. As you can see, it's a band 7. And again, I'd like you to focus on one criterion.
So we've been talking about a well-known person that you like or admire, and I'd like to discuss with you 1 or 2 more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, being in the public eye. Yeah. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of being famous?
The advantages are that first that you will get really rich, and the fame actually helps you because you don't have to pay for a lot of stuff. They will give you free dresses and free stays in the hotels, free meals, free everything. So actually you're saving money plus the money that you're earning. And the disadvantages are that being a public eye, you lose your privacy. You will always be in the eye of the paparazzi and people, and if someone recognizes you, they will take a picture of you, and that's the end of the relaxed evening. So I think that it will be a really big disadvantage.
Do you think if a celebrity accepts those endorsements, do you think they lose their honesty?
I don't think that they will lose their honesty, but maybe it will change them. They will have to accept the environment that they are living into right now. So if they get famous and they are not selling their soul to the devil, I don't think that they are that bad. I think that it's just human, and if they like it, well, better for them.
Can you talk about how the media reports on famous people in your country?
The reports of the media in my country, they are like having half serious news and half entertainment. So the reports are often, but not that often. They don't have like big news if Shakira gets married or not. It's like a small news, but it gets bigger with the people, not with the media, because people start to talk.
Okay, in chat, can you just write down something that she did well? So yeah, I'm seeing pronunciation, yes, and yes, I think Fitriani, you got it. Her lexical resource is very, very strong. Yeah, prompt response, yes, coherence and cohesion. Okay, let's have a look at what she did well. So this is the comments from the examiner. So yes, quite fluent, as some of you mentioned, extended answers and signposts. First, actually, I think so. There's some hesitation, and she lost a bit of coherence towards the latter part of the answer, or each answer that she gave, but generally speaking, she was quite fluent. Yes, this was her main strength, as some of you pointed out, and she used less common idiomatic language, selling their soul to the devil, getting dumped. But you have to, I do have to warn you though, some students try to use idiomatic language in every answer that they give. And if you overuse idiomatic language and you use it inappropriately and in an answer that doesn't really sound right, you may be kind of penalized for that. So you have to be careful about your use of idiomatic language. Yes, she had a good range of simple and complex structures, but there were a few subtle errors. And her pronunciation very clear and easy to follow. So yeah, she got a band 7. So my tips and approaches for part 3. Again, the word that I've been saying in every section, practice. And you will need to practice things like comparing, commenting on, speculating, explaining, agreeing, and disagreeing, because these are the main skills that you need to show in part 3, because it's a discussion. The examiner will ask you things like, what do you think about this? Could you tell me more about that? Use signposts. So these are like, for example, when you're driving a car, you will see a signpost saying, turn left for London, turn right for Brighton. You need to use these signposts in your language as well. So first, second, I think, I decided, I heard that, let me think. As I've mentioned before, use fillers to consider the question first if you get a tough question, but don't overuse fillers. And if you don't understand the question, do ask the examiner to paraphrase. That's fine. So you could say to the examiner, oh, could you repeat that? Perhaps paraphrase it for me? Or could you say that in a different way? And the examiner will. Okay, so here are some more tips. I think I've covered all of those. I covered all those, I think. So, next steps. You can head over to the IELTS Essentials website, or you can go to YouTube. A lot of the videos I have shown you are on the IDP YouTube page. So if you want to have a watch again, do go to YouTube, IELTS Essentials. And you can also take a practice test online. Okay, so questions. I'll ask Leila to join us and ask me the questions, and I'll try to give the best answers I could possibly do.
All right, thank you, Neil. Okay, first question. I think this refers to Tina. Okay, would you lose marks for speaking about more than one topic? Because he was asked about one hobby, he spoke about 3 different hobbies.
No, you would not get penalized for talking about more than one hobby. So for example, if you get the question, describe some music that you love. If you talk about rock and you talk about hip hop and then you talk about R&B, that's fine, as long as you are coherent and you give extended, grammatically correct sentences.
And there's a follow-up question on that. What band has she got on that answer?
Is that for Tina from Vietnam?
Yeah.
I think it was around 5.5. So the problem was that her pronunciation was a big barrier, and also she was making a lot of basic grammatical errors.
Thank you. Next question. So my examiner stopped me all the questions he asked from beginning to the end. One of the explanation for it that I heard was that means you talk enough on this topic, but I achieved 5.5. I am so confused.
All I could guess is that you spoke too quickly, you didn't give extended answers, and it meant that the IELTS examiner had to race through the questions. To be honest, the way the IELTS speaking test is designed is so that the examinee, the candidate, speaks for 14 minutes. if you finished early, it probably means that you didn't extend your answers enough, or you've talking really too fast. Most of the candidates that I've been teaching over the years find that they get to the 14-minute mark and they still want to speak for more time. So it's very rare to find people who speak under kind of 11 minutes.
Thank you. And then we have a question from Tang. How much lexical resources are enough to achieve band 9? Should I use a list of topical words to increase the band?
How long is a piece of string? I mean, if you're aiming for band 9 in lexical resource, let's have a look at band 9. You're looking at a wide range of lexis, and you're looking at using it correctly and to convey meaning. So if we look at band 9 for lexical resource, you're using vocabulary with full flexibility and precision, and you're using idiomatic language naturally. I think that's the key word there, naturally. A lot of learners, a lot of students use idiomatic language unnaturally because they're trying to force it. They know that they need to use idiomatic language, so when they go into the IELTS test and they get a question, they think, I can use that idiom, and they throw it in there, quite often unnaturally. So that can actually be a detriment to their score rather than boosting their score.
Okay, and then next question. In task 2 cue card, could some clues have to be given in cue card about the speaking topic?
Could you say that again, please?
Okay, let me repeat. In task 2 cue card, could some clues have to be given in cue card about the speaking topic? This is from Kaushik.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm afraid, sorry.
If you want to, Kaushik, let me know. You just raise your hand so you can ask the question. So let me move on. So how much of a gap is there between band 8 and band 9? What is the one thing that can differentiate the two bands? Good question.
I mean, the best thing to do is look at the band descriptors and look at the differences between bands 8 and band 9. I mean, the key word here, for example, if you look at fluency and coherence, at band 8, the person develops topics coherently and appropriately, whereas band 9, they develop topics fully and appropriately. It's very fine. The differences are very fine. So it's very difficult to answer that question. It really depends. It's very subjective depending on the candidate.
All right, thank you. And then from Shan Lee, will we be penalized for use of colloquial or informal language? Example, I popped some bread into the oven.
It really depends on the question. So I think if you're looking at band 9, it uses vocabulary with full flexibility and precision. So using vocabulary correctly. So it depends on the type of question you get. If it's a very kind of academic-like question, then you kind of need to switch to a more formal register. Whereas in part 1, you might be asked about your job. So you might not necessarily use formal language. So it really depends on the type of question you get.
Okay, so next question. I think this one is good. If I misunderstood,
sorry, can I just add to
sure,
that?
Sure, I'm sorry.
And you have to bear in mind that the IELTS test is quite an academic test. It's an academic test, essentially. Although there is a general test and there's an academic test, it's still ultimately an academic test. So it's probably better to err on the side of academic vocabulary, formal vocabulary, rather than informal vocabulary. Thank you.
All right. So this one is from Anda. I'm not sure where she heard this. So is that true that when I did well in part 2, the next part could be difficult?
Yes. Yes. If you do really, really well in part 1 and really well in part 2, and you're kind of looking at a high band score, 7, 8, or 9, then the examiner will adjust the questions they give you in part 3. Because obviously the examiner wants to challenge you to find those subtle differences between a band 8 and a band 9, or a band 7 and a band 8. They need to kind of test your language ability. So yes, if you do really, really well in part 1 and part 2, then that will influence the questions you will get in part 3. But having said that, if you have done badly in part 1 and not too well in part 2, you could still save yourself in part 3 by giving amazing answers. And then again, the examiner will respond to that and adjust their questions accordingly.
Thank you. Next question. If I misunderstood the question, but I was able to give a decent answer, will that affect my score, or what will be my score?
It depends on how off topic it is. Usually in part 1 and part 2, the examiner will just carry on. But in part 3, they might repeat the question in order for you to re-answer the question. But it really depends on how off topic you are. I mean, if we look at the band descriptors, it says here for band 8, develops topics coherently and appropriately. So if you're constantly off topic, then you're not developing the topic coherently and appropriately. You're actually developing the topic inappropriately. So yeah, that's a big effect on your fluency and coherency if you are constantly off topic.
Okay, I think this is the second to the last question. Do we need to give a conclusion for part 2?
I mean, conclusions.
Yes.
Part 2. So if we look at the part 2 question, hold on. So usually a part 2 question looks like this. You get a sentence saying describe something. You should say, then you get 3 prompts, and say whether you would recommend it. So I guess you could argue that the last sentence, the last prompt, is a kind of concluding remark. So yes, it would be helpful to give a concluding remark, but it's not necessarily mandatory to do so.
Okay, I guess this question Neil mentioned earlier that accent doesn't matter. However, I will still ask this for you, Anis Yusuf. How to improve my accent to sound more like a native English speaker?
You could study abroad. That's one way. A lot of people who've studied abroad take on the accent of the country where they've studied. So I can usually tell if someone has studied in Australia or someone who's studied in the UK, because they take on some of the attributes of that country in their language. You could purchase a pronunciation course or book. There's quite a few out there, and you could, really work hard on your pronunciation. You could expose yourself to English media, so Western movies and stuff, and try to train your voice. It requires a lot of effort. It's a bit like going to the gym and building a healthy, strong, fit body. You need to put the work in, and you need to be focused about it. If you just go and you're unfocused and you don't have a plan and you don't have a structure, then you're not going to really make many improvements in your pronunciation or your grammar or so on. So if you do really feel that your pronunciation is a weak area, you need to have a plan on how to fix it. So whether that's following an online course, a book course, going to a language center like IDP, or hanging out with native English speaking friends, or even studying abroad. So you need a plan to kind of work on that.
Okay, I think that's all are the questions for tonight. So thank you so much, Neil, for joining us tonight. And for everyone's information, Neil will join us again next month. So for those who are having their IELTS test for academic, you can please join us again towards the end of March for another session with Neil. Thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining me. And I hope to see you and hear from you again in the next webinar. And thank you, Leila, for supporting me in this webinar. Good night, everyone. Good luck.
You're welcome.
And best wishes. Best wishes.
Okay, so for those who are still with us, I would like to share with you the writing tutorial for computer-delivered IELTS.
There are two parts to the writing test. Part 1 and Part 2. You can answer the parts in either order. You write your answer in the space on the right of the screen. Your answers are saved automatically. You do not need to press Enter on your keyboard. For the reading and writing tests, the clock will turn red and flash when you have 10 and 5 minutes left.
Okay, so do you have any question about computer-delivered IELTS test? So if you have any question, feel free to share via Q&A or the chat box, and I will answer it for you. And for those who are not yet registered with IELTS and finally decided to register and have your test soon, please register at www.ieltsregistration.com and do send us an email. So I will share with you my email tomorrow. I will send an email to all the participants and give us the code tonight. So tonight's code is IDP IELTS 2402. So for those who will register and will provide us this code, everyone, for those who are in Zoom and in Facebook Live, we will provide you a free code for Macquarie. It's an online practice material. You will access it for 14 days for free for listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Okay, can we use capital letters to answer listening and reading exam in computer-delivered IELTS? Yes, definitely, both in computer-delivered and even in paper-based IELTS, you can use capital letters. Okay, any other question? Would you repeat the code? All right, IDP, doesn't matter, small caps, all caps, IDP, IELTS, okay, 2402. So again, IDP, IELTS 2402. That is the code. Yes, thank you so much. Pace one. That's right. Are there any computer-based practice tests in your website? Yes, we have a lot of computer-based practice available in our website. Please drop an email to sea.ielts@idp.com so we can share with you the link to practice material. How much does it cost? It depends on the country. It's the same with paper-based and computer-delivered IELTS. Are the CD listening tests corrected by humans or a computer? It's actually being marked by human and computer right away. And for reading and writing, reading and listening only. However, your writing is being marked by humans. Do some computers have technical problems? And if so, does it affect the final score? Because in Algeria, we have so many technical problems and I'm afraid I'll have a negative impact on my scores. It actually depends on the kind of technical problems that you have encountered during the test. So if it's really terrible and it's like will totally affect your score, definitely Test Center will allow you to sit for another test date for free, especially if the technical issue happens like in between the tests. So you just need to approach your test center and I can guarantee they will be glad to assist you. This code is for, okay, for those who are not yet registered with IELTS test and would like to take an IELTS test anytime soon. So after registration, drop us an email, provide us your registration, and then provide us the code, and we will provide you the Macquarie online practice material. So this Macquarie online material will be available for 14 days for you, listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Can we take note on reading on computer? Yes, definitely. So during the computer test, you will be provided with the login details. So the box, you can use it to write. You can use it as a scrap paper, so you can write anything. Okay, sorry. Could you repeat the website? Okay, website is www.ieltsregistration.com. I think I will type it for you guys. All right. Can I get a recorded version of this webinar for further studying? Okay, please drop an email to me. I will share with you the link to Facebook. Anyway, if you are actually in Southeast Asia, so in Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, and Cambodia, also Indonesia, yes, 7 countries in Southeast Asia. You can access the recorded video via IDP IELTS Facebook. Okay, so I think no further questions. So thank you guys for joining us tonight, and we do hope we'll see you again. Thank you, and best wishes for those who will take their IELTS test soon. There's another question, I'm sorry. In computer-based tests, one will automatically put the answers on the page, unlike for the paper. Oh, I'm sorry, what is that? Oh, yeah, definitely. In computer base, you have to type your answers right away. Even for the listening test, okay. For the listening test for computer delivered, there is no 10 minutes to transfer your answers or to write your answers or to type your answers. I'm sorry. So you only have 2 minutes to review your answer for the listening test. So you have to type your answers right away. Unlike in paper base, you have 10 minutes to transfer your answers in the answer sheet. Okay. All right. Thank you so much and good night, everyone. Bye.